Hello and welcome to Iskra. Today's topic, Karl, Dönitz.
Hello, and I'm being recorded. Hello and welcome to whatever this is. I am Klaus, and I am from Germany, the great powerful country in the center of Europe. And I am being joined by a fellow German and history expert, basically a professor.
I'm not a professor, yes. We're both students, to be honest. We have been going to the ID diploma, and for a cast project, we thought about why not do a history podcast.
Yes.
So here we are. Let's see if someone's listening. I don't know.
It's better than saving the world.
Hopefully, yeah. It's a weird way to spend your free time, but it's your choice at the end of the day. No judgment done by us. Just someone we want to greet, not per name completely, but Mr. S, if you're listening, you know who you are.
Yeah, we've got a voodoo doll of yours standing on our windowsill with the hairs of yours attached to it that I stole. Yeah, your mask, you know. Well, so don't push it. And
count this as Cass.
Yes. And now we have spent half a minute wasting your time introducing ourselves, so let's get right to the deal. What are we doing? What's our topic?
Well, as this is a history podcast, we are having the option of trying to do multiple seasons, and the first season I was going to discuss is going to be about Nazis.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's not a counterintuitive choice.
First of all, it's a very polarizing topic, and
which makes it
quite
suited.
Interesting, as well as there's a lot of histories taught about this era, but it's not very specifically focused on individuals,
and not by Germans,
and of course not by Germans focused on the individuals. That's why we said, why not do a whole season on the individuals that led the German Nazi, right? And how they came to power, how they failed in power, and how their downfall at the end was done in the Nuremberg Trials, and what the consequences were of their actions. And for the first episode, we're going to have Karl Dönitz, which is this episode. And I'm sorry for the long introduction, it's not going to be every time, but it's the first episode. And Klaus is going to tell you about the other people we're going to have on the show.
Yeah, well, currently we're thinking about mainly focusing like Nuremberg Trials after wartime, blah blah blah. So, yeah, I know, I just said that on a podcast, on a cast project. Who cares? And the other people we are considering to cover are, I believe, Hermann Göring, Albert Speer, other people as well.
Hermann Göring,
Martin
Albert
Bormann,
Himmler, Bormann. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Generally, anyone you request us to do, if you're watching,
if
and
anyone
has some kind of importance to the era, we would like to do that.
If anyone will ever see this or listen to this, I should probably say. See this would be kind of creepy, because then they'd have hacked our webcam or something. I mean,
No, we have a Twitter account. We should mention that.
We do.
Would you want to say the name of the Twitter account, though?
Yeah, that would be kind of good. Okay.
Well, it's gonna be in the where the sources are.
In the who cares?
Under the podcast.
Currently, it's called So You Think You Can Dictate, but we still are kind of unsure what we're gonna name the podcast. So,
how we're gonna name the podcast?
Yeah.
We should start with Dönitz right now.
Yeah. Let's get in. So, Dönitz was born on the
16th 16th of September 1891.
That was slick. In Grünau, a suburb of
Berlin and Prussia to middle class family.
Yeah, upper middle class-ish.
Upper middle class,
Yeah. We did a lot of research. We're gonna link some sources in half of them are in German, so
Half on English then.
Fact checkers, that's our challenge.
Not a lot of Spanish sources.
So, Dönitz's mother died when he was 4 years old. He's got an older brother. His dad is like an engineer. Yeah, don't know what he does. I think electricity shit.
Not very specifically mentioned in any of the sources.
But you know, earning decent income. Yeah. They're doing fine. I mean, it's like during the Industrial Revolution and so on, so that's a big deal. So, you know, but he wasn't hungry, he didn't have to work, he was fine.
Talking about the German Revolution, we could say that this was quite an interesting time, not just for Dönitz himself, but also for the German Kaiserreich. Because,
by the way, for all the Americans, Germany's got a Kaiser. He's a big deal, emperor, basically. Yeah, they're all going get that Yas queen.
And in the German Kaiserreich, it was a very militaristic atmosphere. They were marveling at great battles in history class, and Germany was a country that hasn't been around as long as other countries in Europe, and therefore is trying to
put it mildly,
catch up in some kind of way. And Dönitz was kind of part of this catch-up, but not really. He was more the one who then used the political climate after the First World War to get into a higher power.
Yeah, so the thing is with Dönitz, you know, Germany's playing catch-up. They are building a huge fleet, or at least they're trying to rival the British on the seas. They are, amassing all these colonies. They are industrializing, building all kinds of railway lines, and have large growing cities. They're going through like all the growing pains of industrialization, and they're having a fun time. It is terrible. And yeah, but for someone like Dönitz, it was a time of optimism. You know, he grows up. His country.
Everybody in Germany was quite optimistic at this time.
Well, everybody.
Not everybody, but most life was getting better.
Yeah, I mean, those who weren't poor,
It's always in every country, both not poor or
except for Norway.
Okay. And of course, due to this generation grew believing that the sky was the limit and the German Empire would last throughout a lifetime.
Yes, and be like the world's dominant force forever.
And a lot of this.
But you know what then happened was basically a meteor struck the Earth 65 million years ago, killed the dinosaurs, and set Earth on the unavoidable path of leading to World War I. Now, Dönitz joins the Navy. He is 19 years old, and he goes to Nuremberg, which is going to come full circle later. Spoilers. And Nuremberg is a town in Flensburg, which is a city on the Danish border.
In the north of Germany.
Yeah, it's in the north Denmark.
Just for people who
might
don't know what
have
Denmark
heard of that.
is. Well, you want to keep going?
Yeah, shout out to Birkerød Model United Nations, you're awesome people. Okay, so yeah. So Dönitz is 23 years old when the conflict escalates in 1914. He's been promoted a couple times. Now, for him, he's upper middle class, but he's not royalty. For him, the Navy is a pretty exciting place. It gives him an opportunity to climb up the otherwise very rigid pre-war social ladder, in Germany under the Kaiserreich. He's young, he's intelligent, he's a strapping guy, he's a freedom-loving patriot. Well, more like a mustache-loving patriot, to be honest.
Of course. And in the German Navy, he then was put into action for the first time in his life. And this was quite an interesting time for Dönitz, and just generally because this was his lifelong dream to be in action in some kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, he's been reading like Plutarch and shit in school, you know, so everyone, all the boys there, they want to be Alexander the Great. So Dönitz, he sets sail. He serves based in the Ottoman Empire in the Black Sea on a ship called the Breslau, which is no longer a city in Germany. And he garners further distinction. He is promoted to lieutenant in 1916, and he ties the knot with the daughter of a major general, so he also ups his social game. And in 1916, there's a third big development in his life. He enrolls in an entirely new branch of the German Navy.
The submarine part of
Drum
the German
roll.
Navy.
Yeah. Spoilers.
Spoilers, this is quite important for Dönitz and his later career because the submarine corps was his main focus.
It was kind of a big deal in World War II.
It was a very big deal for the German
We'll
Navy
get
in
to
World
that.
War II, and Dönitz kind of was the leading figure in the naval warfare.
Yes.
In the Second World War.
But for now, Dönitz's dream of German world domination does a Titanic and, well... stays on the bottom of the North Sea. But, well, not literally.
Dönitz is still alive.
Yeah.
It would be a weird show if not.
He ends up in British custody at the end of the war, so he doesn't even get to fight at the end, which, I mean, he must have kind of lamented because there was there was a Sailors Uprising in Kiel in 1918, and that was because the German High Command, the Oberste Heeresleitung, they wanted to have like one last great orgy of death and destruction in the North Sea, and the soldiers were kind of miffed about the idea of their participation in said orgy, so they caught wind of the plan and started an insurrection.
Exactly. After the First World War and that crisis, I would think we should go over to what was in the Weimar Republic, don't you think?
Yes, I think we should still mention that.
Oh yeah, sure. You can keep going.
I'm sure. This is my patronising Britishness, so I know.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
If you want to mention something, it's always our turn.
No, I'm kidding. So the Sailors Uprising, the Kiel Sailors Uprising, that then developed into a nationwide mutiny that toppled the Kaiserreich. So it was kind of a bit of an embarrassment for Mr. Dönitz because, you know, his own mates, they basically destroyed all his dreams, and now he was standing
all his dreams of fighting again, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. So the Kaiser... He leaves for Belgium, then to the Netherlands, and is gone, and Germany is declared a...
Republic.
Yeah, here we go. History Professor Michael's going now. The Weimar Republic.
Which was not quite the dream for
Dönitz is released from custody.
Not military duty, but
from British as a POW.
Custody. And returns back to the Weimar Republic, which also still has a German Navy, but this does not see as much action
Yes.
as the German Navy in the First World
To
War.
put it mildly, the Versailles Treaty, of course, mandated that the German Navy should significantly be cut down. I believe the German military only was allowed to have like 100,000 soldiers, and the German Navy wasn't allowed to have submarines, believe it or not.
This was the most, boring time in his career in the German Navy, because really nothing really was going on at that time.
Yes.
He didn't have much to do, so the Weimar Republic and Dönitz is not the most interesting time period for the person.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the Nazi era, also not the most interesting person, except the ones like Rudolf Hess, who made the Nazi Party.
Yeah, that was kind of a big deal of
That
his
was
in the
kind of-
20s. Yeah. He really made the best of his 20s, but Dönitz... yeah.
That's a good one.
I know. Yeah. But Dönitz, I mean, I believe he didn't even join the Nazi Party.
No, he did not join the Nazi
No,
Party.
he did not. He was, of course, very guy set in his way, very conservative, blah, blah, blah. German military, he certainly didn't support the Weimar Republic, but he kind of felt that it's his duty to still kind of be involved in the military and so on. So, yeah, he isn't as politically active as many other Nazi figures were in the 20s, and he certainly wasn't a household name, but he was, slowly, working his way up.
Working his way up, of course.
Working his way up at the ranks.
And he's the most important time period for all our fellow persons we're gonna have as the main focus in this podcast for the first season is, of course, 1933, when the Nazi Party does get into power.
Yes.
And a lot of things change. For Dönitz, this meant that he was appointed to commander of the fleet in 1936, the submarine.
Yes, before that, he had been to Southeast Asia for a couple months, been on a tour there. Otherwise, yes, he was then actually appointed by Hitler as commander of the submarine fleet, which was a big deal, especially because the submarines became very strategically valuable.
Yes, exactly. One thing we want to do in this podcast for each episode, what we're trying, is to have one Churchill quote describing the certain person.
That comes now.
I will put it right now because it kind of fits to Dönitz and his U-boats.
Go.
Churchill once said that the only thing that kept me in constant fear was Dönitz's ships. He said this after the war, of course, but as when he was interviewed once. But this, of course, meant that Dönitz's U-boats were quite effective at the beginning of the war and were the main, Churchill stated was the main fear of the British Empire at that time, as well as the German Navy in general after Britain was then pushed out of European mainland. But the German U-boats were kind of a shock to the world.
Yes, one could say so. Now, Dönitz established the Atlantic Sea blockade. That's something for which he quickly became during the war, by the way, as you might have noticed. So, Dönitz quickly becomes a national hero, household name. He's a big deal. He cuts off the Tommies from all the supplies from their colonies and former colonies, and yeah, that works pretty well. He's basically sinking all the supply ships, all the passenger ships indiscriminately. If they've got an English flag, they're on the bottom of the North Sea.
Not just an English flag, an American flag.
Yeah.
Any Allied flag.
Who cares?
Anything that's actually just
most of them were English
around.
Flags.
Of course,
India, they had an English flag.
Well, no, some of them, the American convoys were mostly American.
Yeah, I guess so. Here we go. Accuracy.
Accuracy is important in history, isn't it?
So, Now, we will go through this very quickly because, of course, focus is on the Nuremberg Trials and after-war life. So, the world's sexiest mathematicians and best paid ones, Benedict Cumberbatch and Keira Knightley, what do they do?
Wow.
They crack the Enigma code and thereby deliver a decisive blow to German naval dominance in the first years of the war. So,
while Germany's navy was steering into rough waters, Dönitz's career was taking off faster than the V2 rocket.
yes, it was.
Anybody who gets that reference.
Ha ha ha. No, it's not much of a reference.
Oh yeah.
Subtlety.
Subtle joke.
Yeah. Joke. That's
And
German humour for you.
And he was quickly promoted to be an admiral. And when Erich Rieder lost the Bismarck in the Battle of the Barents Sea, and subsequently Hitler's goodwill and look, if your boss is Hitler and you mess something up, you're not gonna have a lot of job prospects in the future, are you?
Yeah, they're about as good as those of an alcoholic, Jewish, pork-loving, unapologetically nudist, apostolizing, Tyrannian gay strip club owner with a bless America face tattoo that openly conspires to overthrow the Ayatollahs in favour of a jousting-based system of governance, and who right now is at a stoning, but for some reason has forgotten his stone, so let that be a warning. If your boss should be Hitler. Stoning must be fun with social distancing. I mean, they can't. They're just standing 6 feet apart. They're lobbing the stones at each other.
Yeah, it's gonna be different.
It's difficult with a face mask. I mean, yeah, according to the chief editor of Stoning Weekly, stoning there has been a decisive blow to Iran's stoning community. By the way, Stoning Weekly.
You've been a great sponsor. We just had to mention that. And getting back onto topic.
Yeah, smash through the news right to the
Dönitz
point.
was appointed head of the German Navy by the Führer himself, of course, after all of this had happened, which was in 1943, I believe. Klaus,
yes,
if I'm
you
wrong.
are true. The fact checker himself.
But the most important part of Dönitz's career after he became head of the German Navy, which was quite not as dominant as before after 1943, because Germany was losing the war
it kind of
at
fell
that
apart.
time.
Might have heard about it.
The Reich was falling apart in its philosophy as well as in its just military power.
Hitler got himself hooked on cocaine.
Of course, after D-Day had happened, the Navy was kind of forgotten anyway. So the Navy, as being the German Navy leader, Dönitz kind of was steering a sinking ship. You could say that.
Yeah.
It's It's a
that's a very convoluted pun. Here we go. The rats were leaving the sinking ship. Well, the thing.
The most important part of Dönitz's career was, though, that when Hitler was finally killed by Hitler.
He fled to Argentina.
There's still a difference between
we Germans, we like to pull your legs a bit and say he killed himself,
but he might have been fled to Argentina and is living in a living facility with Elvis Presley. We don't know.
Yeah,
Can't be sure.
Tupac.
Even if the skull was found in last year's.
Nah.
But we're not sure that's true.
We brought it back. He died
might
recently.
be a conspiracy. You don't know.
Yeah. So.
But if Hitler killed Hitler, credit where credit's due.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is quite. I mean, killing Hitler, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal. Well, Dönitz, after Hitler was killed, became the
President.
The Reichspräsident.
Yes, he became Reichspräsident. So, quick history lesson.
For 24 days. It's not that impressive as you would
in the Weimar Republic, because before Hitler was, officially appointed himself to Führer of the nation, and actually today, even after the war, things work like this. You've got a president and you've got a chancellor. The president is kind of the old guy. He's basically the replacement Kaiser. He's like a monarch. We don't have monarchs as we do in Germany. Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the current one.
And Angela Merkel.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Merkel they'll have heard of. So, Dönitz is appointed to the post of president, and by Hitler, after Hitler kills himself. Hitler drafts up a testimony. Now, with Dönitz, something that is quite important to understand is that Hitler kind of got really pissed at his inner circle. Like Hess took a plane to England. Oh gosh, yeah. Göring was a drug addict, and he later tried to sign a peace deal with the Americans.
Himmler also tried to sign a peace deal with the British. I think.
He met in Stockholm.
Well, the German high command at that time was just falling apart.
Yeah.
There was no real Reich anymore, and
Goebbels was
never going to last 1,000 years as they expected it to.
Well,
in 1933,
they were very surprised.
Quite surprised. And after Hitler killed himself, that was kind of the end point of the war, and of course, everything was lost before, but this was the point where everybody kind of knew, well, how do we get out of this the most easy way possible?
Yeah.
Which doesn't harm us the most. And Dönitz was, as already mentioned, the chancellor?
No.
President, Reichspräsident at the time. And for 24 days, he did this quite honorably, you could say.
He couldn't actually, but yeah.
At least he tried.
He was a Nazi.
Of course he was a Nazi after all. And after then, the Germany... The German...
So... To give you, I'm sorry, I'll just segue into here, because I think we should give the poor viewers a little overview over the timeline. Yes, so Hitler shoots himself. It is the 30th of April, 1945. Oh man! Magnus, what was that?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Not long.
Mum called. So, Hitler shoots himself. It's the 30th of April, 1945. And on the 1st of April, Dönitz assumes the chancellorship. Now, the kind of Hitler's secretary and the guy who was basically who had access to Hitler and also then could provide access to Hitler, that's also quite important, is Martin Bormann. And he is sort of myth.
We're going to talk about Martin Bormann later.
Yeah, but let's put it this way. Martin Bormann, he's a bureaucrat like Dönitz. He's not a guy who holds big speeches. He's a guy who tries to get things done. He's not a big public speaker. The speech is bombed in the Bush administration, but he still, would have kind of liked the gig as president.
Of course.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, who wouldn't?
And, he was kind of after that gig for a very long time already.
Yeah,
it's going to be a focus of another episode, of course.
So Dönitz. So Martin Bormann calls Dönitz, tells him, I guess you'll be appointed president now. Doesn't tell him
worst thing he's most likely has done in his whole career.
Yeah, doesn't tell him that Hitler popped his clocks. So, all fled to Argentina.
Who knows?
or fled to Argentina. So he calls them 1st of May, one day later, but April's only got 30 days. I know. This intellectual banter of ours.
Just so many scientific facts where I can't compete with that.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Okay, so Dönitz is appointed Chancellor, and Goebbels then also kills himself and his family and his 6 kids and his wife Magdalena.
We're gonna talk about
all fled to Argentina.
Of course. And after, well, I would go after now to the Nuremberg Trials when...
In a second.
When then everything falls apart. There's this peace deal which cannot be really seen as a peace deal.
Yeah, so...
It's more of a deal where Germany has to sign anything the Allies put in front of them.
So, short history lesson. Himmler approaches Dönitz, and Heinrich Himmler does not get the gig. He can't work in the Dönitz government. The Dönitz government, Dönitz, by the way, as a president, the German president doesn't get to do so right now, but he did get to do so in the Weimar Republic, and Dönitz got to do so. He appoints a chancellor, Johann von Schwerin-Krosigk. Yeah, another
interesting
bourgeois. It stopped.
Oh, no, don't fucking tell me it stopped. Oh, I'm sorry, we just had some technical difficulties.
I know. That's fun. So, he appoints Johann Ludwig Graf Schwerin von Krosigk, who...
Quite a long name, to be honest.
And who coincidentally is the granddad of... This will be more interesting for German viewers, but still. The granddad of...
I don't know.
Have a guess, which party is she in?
AfD.
Ah, what a surprise! We are, of course, talking about Beatrix von Storch. Yes. What a coincidence! Like, there are 6 parties. How could he have known?
As if...
I know! It is how could he have known? So, yeah, the AfD, they're basically are Republicans. Yeah, kind of a bit more moderate, actually. They haven't suggested injecting bleach yet.
Not yet. We should wait for that.
Yeah, it's
just
probably...
takes about another month of coronavirus.
Woo! Yeah, I know. Yay! Hooray! They also don't condemn Nazis as frequently.
They have very political right-wing speeches for anybody who does not know the AfD, because they do not follow German politics.
Yeah, so Schwerin von Krosigk, he is the man. He is Chancellor, and now probably the most infamous, important part of Dönitz's chancellorship came quite early, on day number 8. Basically, what happens is Alfred Jodl, he flies to Reims in La France, and he then gets to sign some documents. He tries to negotiate a peace deal. Dönitz, he would have kind of liked to, keep his gig, remain
vice president, have some kind of form of power in the then Allied control.
They were kind of still speculating. Well, maybe the Allies, they're going to leave us alone.
Maybe he's going to be a nice guy.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to make this atrocity not seem as bad as it actually is.
Yeah, I'll do my job. That's basically,
still destroying the cutscenes. Yeah. Well, that wasn't gonna happen. Well, Auschwitz was liberated on the 27th of January. They were still trying to.
Yeah,
hush it up in a way.
Yeah, worked well. So, Dönitz, he Gosh, are we really talking like this?
Oh, we're gonna talk for a very long time.
Yes.
Now,
So, Dönitz.
this episode is getting to an end soon. We're now gonna go into Nuremberg Trials after this peace deal was signed,
Yes.
in which he did not get what he really wanted. You
Yes,
could say.
he would have. They had to sign an unconditional surrender. It was then formally signed by Keitel in Berlin.
Yes.
So yes, after Wilhelm Keitel signs that peace deal, the war is over. But Dönitz moves around in my home state, Schleswig-Holstein, from place to place. Schleswig-Holstein, for lovers of World War II history, basically that's where all the Nazis went when they tried to flee from...
The more north, the better.
Yeah, well, you know, they tried to get away from the Soviets in the east. They tried to get away from the Allies in the west. So they had to go north.
Yeah.
And Dönitz based his
last headquarters in Flensburg again.
in Mürwik, in the Marine Sportschule, where he actually went to school, believe it or not.
Which is quite interesting, just because it goes full circle again.
Full circle, yeah.
And after all of this had happened, and then all of the Nazi party were either dead or the higher command of the Nazi
in
party
custody,
were
or in
dead,
Argentina, possibly.
or in Argentina, were found and were in custody. The Nuremberg Trials were about 1 year later, you could say.
Yes, well, Dönitz's gig as president was over on the 23rd of May. 1945. He and the entire German government, basically what happened was they were having their morning briefing or whatever. The British officers march in, make them all strip. Must have been a fun morning briefing.
As if they had stripped before.
Yeah, I know. Like, imagine. I mean, what were they gonna do in the last days of the Reich? Like, imagine you're sitting in a meeting and you're wondering what would everything.
I just hope they put on some music.
Yeah. Well, so what would it be like if everyone would sit here undressed? You know. We're mentally undressing the people because it's so
that's
boring.
why there's been a long culture of FKK in Germany.
Especially in the north. And now the English officers march in, do them the favour, let them all strip, check them for like, what is Kali in English? Capsules, suicide capsules, pills.
Anything that they could use to kill themselves.
Yeah, the Nazis, they distributed amongst everyone. Many people in the Nazi Reich, spoilers, we're not going to get into that. So, Dönitz is taken into custody, and he kind of expected to be left alone. You know, maybe he'd get like a nice cushy retirement, but no, he is put on trial.
In the Nuremberg Trials as any other Nazi leader who was still alive.
And Magnus...
not in Argentina at the time. And we're just going to focus on a bit of the Nuremberg Trials. Yeah. Well, Dönitz was accused for multiple things.
Recap, what were the Nuremberg Trials?
First of all, the Nuremberg Trials were the trials after the war held for the different Nazi members, as well as different crimes committed by the German nation at the time.
Yes, so they had this one main trial against the main suspects, the people from the Nazi High Command.
The people of our podcast episodes.
Yes, I know. Our guys, whom we are gonna milk for IB points in ways that will be considered human rights abuses. So, yeah. Die Nürnberger Prozesse gegen die Hauptkriegsverbrecher, as we call it in German affectionately. There were also other Nuremberg trials against judges or doctors.
Smaller parties in general, as well as, of course, different crimes committed. Huger crimes where the focus was on a specific event.
Yes, what were the people in the Nuremberg trials accused of? What were the articles?
There's a lot of different things people were accused of, but Dönitz himself, focusing back on the topic, was accused of killing innocent captured victims, for example, by drowning them after he had successfully annihilated the opponent, of course, in the navy, drowning the prisoners instead of like a normal militaristic command, actually making them POWs, or
Yes.
prisoners of war.
You know, they'd sink the ship and just let the people rot.
Just either let the people drown, or if you're even worse, I don't know.
Which is a war crime, by the way.
Of course,
I should add.
It's always a war crime.
And it was a war crime at the time under the Geneva Convention, the favourite document of everyone. Well, at least those who surrender, yeah. So
he was accused of multiple things, not just that, but that was the main focus.
That was the main focus, yes. He was also accused of conspiring to start Angriffskrieg, attacking, or
as well as accused of being of political importance in the Nazi government and their views, which were of course also human crimes. Human crimes, I don't know.
Crimes against humanity.
Crimes against humanity, that's the word.
Yes, I know, Germans often forget.
Yeah. Human crimes is just any crime committed by a human.
Yeah, as opposed to ape crime. No, yes, we are apes.
I have some quotes that I found quite interesting from the Nuremberg Trials.
More quotes? Oh my gosh.
Yes, I like quotes. Quotes are fun. Well, Dönitz said at the trials, after he was accused of being a great political figure, that the first time, also das erste Mal politisch betätigt habe ich mich am 1. Mai 1945.
So the first time...
Which means the first time he was politically active in any kind of way in the Nazi Party was the day he was appointed to Reichspräsident. Just thinking logically, this cannot be true in any way, of course, but it was portrayed that way, and his defense was he didn't have a big political involvement until, of course, he signed the peace treaty with the Allies because he was such a nice person. That's what he's trying to defend right there.
Yeah, well, the thing is that is, of course, not entirely true. Dönitz was a very...
a lot of fun story. Just because of political engagement.
A fun story?
Yeah, a fun story of Dönitz when
Can I quickly
finish
my point?
First.
I'm sorry. Okay, so that is not true because Dönitz was like a very important part of the Nazi propaganda, and he would always be in newsreels and talk very affectionately about the Führer and very anti-Semitically about certain sectors of the population and so on, and he was definitely a person who, yes, was very much involved with the Nazi Party, very much did endorse the goals.
A good story, not just involved the Nazi Party, and that he was not politically involved, was that Dönitz, when he was the leader of the Nazi Navy, or the Reichsmarine, Kriegsmarine, sorry. Kriegsmarine, not Reichsmarine. He actually held political speeches in front of his troops when they went out on submarine conquest, for example. And this was very off for a naval officer of his command to actually have political speeches in front of people because, well, he was a military officer, not a politician.
But he was, of course, the top dog.
He was a top dog, but there's a lot of people who are like Zeitzeugen, people who are still alive. Witnesses who keep telling us that when he had these political speeches, it was like looking at an actor who had never acted before and didn't know how to portray the part he was playing. he was always lost in his speeches and was just trying to play this political.
Also, when you
figure.
listen to his voice, he sounds like a mouse. Like squeaking.
That's true too.
Yeah, he was not a good. He did not come up through the Nazi ranks through his oratory abilities.
And something that he also mentioned in the Nuremberg Trials, or I know this was after the Nuremberg Trials, of course, because it would be a stupid defense.
Yeah.
He said, ich halte diese Kriegsführung für gerechtfertigt und würde es genauso wieder tun.
So, I think of this
waging
way
war.
of conducting, yeah.
Waging war as the only way to conduct war, and if I would have to do it all over again, I would do it the same way. Which he said after this, which of course you can see he does not really regret any of his decisions, which kind of reflect the ideology of the Nazi party at the time, as well as just how this person, spoiler warning, got not enough years for what he did.
Yeah. Well, so, shall we wrap the Nuremberg Trials up, or shall we?
Yeah, one more thing he was
about...
accused of, which is quite important because I think people would like to know, he was also accused of killing civilians on purpose.
Oh.
By shooting some...
That's a banger.
For example, on the first day of war against Britain, he actually purposely gave out the command to his submarines to shoot any civil ship with a civilian ship with a British flag on. So wrapping up the Nuremberg Trials,
he was kind of
he
bad
got
too.
10 years.
Yeah, he did. So he sat in prison from 1946 until, who can do the math?
1956.
I know, it is incredible.
It's incredible.
Now,
his defense worked magnificently in today's standards, because you think of people who sat in for jail for 10 years, there's people who do drug crimes who sit in jail for 10 years, and this guy was shooting civilians and drowning prisoners of war, and he got the same amount as a drug dealer who maybe had a bigger drug ring now.
Well, maybe in America. In Germany, it'd probably come off with a better.
Mess,
we're cool.
Second time offense.
I know. Yeah, probably even third time, 10 years. Or even rapists get like 2 or something. So
it's really not if we saw.
Nah, it depends. It depends on the case. Well, anyway.
Don't quote us on legal stuff. It's not
don't take legal advice from us. We are not liable for legal advice you think you're...
You should ask Dönitz for legal advice. Somehow he did magic.
So, with Dönitz now, the way he managed to defend himself was that he wasn't sentenced for letting POWs drown because, well, the Yanks, Uncle Sam, they actually did the same thing.
They did the same thing. You have to mention, of course,
in the Pacific.
In the Pacific with the Japanese, which was his defense was, well, they did it, so we should be allowed to do it too. And of course, because they were the ones who were actually doing the trial, and they could not deny doing it because.
Well, if they would sentence people to death that way, let's say some American admirals, well, they would have kind of pissed their pants, so that was not going to happen.
Well, the Americans were seen as heroes from America, and it was a kind of a time of tension also between the winning powers, so nobody really wanted to piss them off.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, they had the bomb.
There's a lot of factors, of course, but yeah.
Who cares? So
and the second defense he had, which kind of didn't hold up, was that he never was politically active.
Yeah, he was just... I just followed orders. I never made a decision in my life.
I was just the leader of the Nazi Navy. I did not do much of commanding.
Yes. How could I have
known that there were casualties?
How could my position have been relevant if I was just president of the German Reich?
Oh, and for example, why he was also not just he was a good leader for the navy. He was militaristically speaking, he was quite
Capable, at least.
capable and also efficient in what he was doing.
Yeah, but efficient in the sense.
After, for example, the war being lost, and it was not really. There was no sense of actually people still going into U-boats and trying to shoot British Navy. And of course, this was based on high command generally that Hitler was never going to give up the war, except when he started to flee to Argentina. But Dönitz, there was still in Frühjahr or in spring of 45 over 5,000 U-boat soldiers from the German Navy still died, so they were still getting sent into so-called suicide missions.
He was still holding his speeches. He was still, making sure that people went out there.
There's not a lot of U-boats left from
that time. They crash in flames, Well, Dönitz is often hailed by, revisionist historians, neo-Nazis, and shit like that.
To wrap up the episode, we have one more interesting story after the unknown.
Well, we've got more interesting stories.
Of course, there's a lot of interesting stories, but we're trying to wrap it up. And thankfully, maybe you're still here. If you're not, I'm sorry.
And if you are, what the fuck?
Exactly. After Dönitz was sentenced to 10 years and came back to prison, he actually started living near where we're taking the episode right now.
Yeah.
We're in Bergedorf, and he started living in Almühle, where he's also buried, which is about, 10 minutes, 20 minutes by bike, 5 minutes by car from here, and his grave is actually still there. And a lot of right-wing party people actually go to that grave, which is kind of...
Well, right-wing is kind of, to put it mildly.
Very mildly.
Yeah. Nazi...
And the interesting story we have was Klaus going to share most of it. We actually had a guest invited, he couldn't make it today. But the story about the school.
Yeah. We'll get into that. No,
I think we should.
There's just... There's one or two little things that I want to mention before Dönitz's war record. He is often revered by neo-Nazi historians, and that is one of the main reasons why he is still highly acclaimed in such circles for having supposedly saved thousands and thousands of Germans from eastern Pomerania from the Russians by sending boats there to evacuate them from the approaching Red Army. Now, this is, let's say...
True to a certain extent.
True to some extent, yes. There were very much German ships fetching people from these places, however, usually it was on their own initiative of the captains, and Dönitz's plans at the end of the war drew resources away from these rescue missions. But, it also was a factor in his Nuremberg Trials. So, Dönitz gets out of prison, 1956, and he settles close to us. And what might be reasons for him settling in a quiet town outside of Hamburg? We were wondering, and since neither of us have read his autobiography, since it's standing on my granddad shelf and I can't visit him due to the coronavirus, we can only guess why he did it. What do you think?
I would guess that it's just because it's a quiet place. Hamburg is
It's low-key.
It's very close to Hamburg, and the sea as well as the Navy was always kind of his passion, so he was close to the ocean in some way.
Yeah, maybe his mates.
As well as his mates, of course. And he was trying to go to a quiet place after he was, I think it's still repeating, technical difficulty.